Welcome to the Artists Index. I'm Scott Bishop, your host for this episode. I'm a New Bedford-based singer, songwriter, and sound sculptor making music under the name Scapegoat. I also present the live concert series, Unexpected Music, which features South Coast musicians performing in non-traditional performing spaces around New Bedford. The In Focus podcasts are generously sponsored in part by Heavenly Spirits Importers and funded in part with grants from the New Bedford Cultural Council and the Fairhaven Cultural Council, local agency supported by the Mass Cultural Council, a state agency. I'd like to invite our guest to introduce herself, spell her name, and talk a little bit about what she does.
Hey everybody, I'm Mercy Bell, and you spell that Mercy, like Mercy, Mercy Me, and Bell, like Taco Bell. And I'm a songwriter and singer-songwriter. I'm currently based out of Nashville, but I grew up partially in New Bedford. So I've got a lot of Massachusetts ties. And yeah, I've kind of been taking a break from touring recently and been focusing more on songwriting. So that's kind of where I've been.
Excellent. What's your current focus songwriting wise?
I'm writing a musical out of About Face Theater in Chicago with Scott Bradley, who's in a lifelong career music theater fellow and writer. And it's a true story about the origination of gay leather culture in Chicago. So, and one of the real life characters, one of the people who is a participant and a major influence on that scene was part Filipino. So they wanted to get like a Filipino American to help write it, and it's been a lot of fun. So that's been taking up a lot of my time. And I also have been working for Songfinch, which is a website where you can get custom personal songs written, and it's a lot of fun. So, and it pays pretty well too. So
Nice.
That's kind of where I've been spending my time. Yeah.
So how did you end up working on Leather Daddies?
Scott Bradley and his business partner, Johnny Stacks, were already fans of my music. And they, when they found out that I was part Filipino, it kind of solidified them wanting to ask me to do it. They had been looking for kind of more classically trained Broadway composers, but then they decided that they wanted to have a folk rock, they would just say rock, a rock musical element and vibe. So they went out on a limb and asked me, and I was overjoyed because I always loved musical theater.
So what's it like writing for a story as opposed to how you might normally write songs?
I've always enjoyed having a prompt, and it's kind of my preferred way of writing as opposed to this kind of navel-gazing journalistic type stuff. I prefer writing for a prompt because I think it stretches my writing capabilities and it forces me out of a comfort zone. So it's honestly been some of the most easy and kind of creatively challenging, but in a good way, seasons of my life. Honestly, it's great. I recommend it. I recommend to everybody getting put on a deadline with very specific prompts. It's like Tim Gunn is right behind you.
Make it work.
Make it work. Make a dress out of newspaper. Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun.
Aside from getting out of your own head, what's the benefit of like that combo of the deadline and writing for characters and writing for story in terms of just being able to get going?
I mean, you just got to do it. And there's a point where you don't have the luxury of wallowing. And, I mean, I have worked on my own projects before where the echo chamber and, the same 5 people that you've been working with for 3 years, it's just like I've wasted a lot of money because people are like, oh, I've thought about this too much now. And then you go back and forth and it's like too many chefs in the kitchen or whatever. And it's like, you don't have that luxury when you have a tight budget. You have 5 days to write 4 songs and like there's grant money on the line. It really takes you out of this kind of like, I think, selfish indie artist wallowing, navel gazing stuff. So it's been really fun. Yeah.
And where does the musical actually stand right now in terms of where it's at, pre-production or production?
Right now in so I don't know. I came into this not really knowing how musical theater timelines work, but I've learned a lot. So right now we're at the stage where it's now in the hands of the theater to present kind of a look-see for producers and investors. And so we have like the first 8 songs for the first act, and we're gonna hopefully put that on for some producers. But we do have a concept album that we recorded here in Nashville that I believe is going to be released, that has some pretty well-known Nashville songwriters, singer-songwriters on it. And that was recorded to be released to the public. I just don't know when. It's finished though.
Got it.
Yeah.
And let's talk about Songfinch, because that's a very different aspect of songwriting. Custom songs for, people who hire you, is like a special occasion, or...
Yeah, so anybody can sign up if you would like a custom song. I believe it's $200. I get half of that, which is very well worth all of the administrative stuff that they take care of. They take care of, if they do all like the customer management, so I don't have to worry about any of that, which is honestly great. And so anybody can buy a song, and then you specify for what the occasion is, who it's for. You kind of half write the song yourself, so people tend to like write a couple paragraphs about what it's about, who it's for, must have details, and I just write a song around that, and then I'll record it on my home setup. So it's like very intimate, very raw, but people really love it. And I have had people be like, well, can't I just give you the 200? And I'm like, honestly, going through Songfinch, it helps. Having somebody else take care of the administrative and management side of it is wonderful, because
it's a huge time suck, that stuff.
Oh, it is. And it's like they take care of it. They take care of like the tax forms. They take care of all of that for me. So instead of me having to try to wrangle all that, it's just and plus they have, the more songs I write through them, the higher up I get in their system and stuff like that. So if you would like a custom song, go through Songfinch, because I love it, and it's definitely paid a lot of bills for me this last year.
How many songs have you written through Songfinch?
I feel like it's upwards of 20 now, but I just joined like 2022, so it's great. Again, if you want to just look it up, I should pop up pretty easily. And yes, I'm no longer doing. There was a point when people were like, well, can't I just give you the money? And I'm like, please go through Songfinch, because it takes so much of the headache out, because they also take care of like the song edit, like making sure it sounds good and all that stuff. So
like you send them
it's
tracks,
great.
they're mixing it. If they have to edit it, they handle it.
There's not so much mixing. It's more of like they'll take a listen and keep it at like quality. Like they do the quality control, and if it seems like it's not up to their quality, then they'll send it back and be like, fix this. But yeah, it's not mixed so much. It's usually just like a guitar track and a vocal track. But yes, I highly recommend it.
It's got to be good to hear back from them rather than say the customer.
Absolutely.
You need that kind of filter between.
Absolutely. And people are going to be way more, if you have like Songfinch being your like rep, it takes away a lot of the, if you have an angry customer or whatnot, it's filtered. So I love it. And I would love to write a song for you guys. So head on over to Songfinch. Plus you're also helping out a lot of other artists as well, because the more Songfinch grows, the more, they're able to help like take care of all the artists.
That's amazing. I'm going to check it out when we're done.
Do it.
And everyone else listening should as well.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the start. What prompted your interest in music when you were younger?
I've always been in a musical family, so I don't really remember a time when there wasn't music. playing or people singing, or both my parents were, my dad was classically trained pianist and was in a rock band as like a teenager, and my mom was in a choir, like a very famous choir out of the University of the Philippines. And I don't know, my grandmother was a classically trained pianist. I just don't remember a time when music wasn't around. So it's always been weird to me when people are like, "Oh, I started doing it." It's always been part of my life. And so they put me in a choir at age 7. So it's just, I didn't have much of a choice around it, but it was great because I always loved it. And then so that just kept going until I did musical theater in high school. And then it was actually Little Theater in Fall River. And I did a jazz voice at UMass Dartmouth with Marcel Gauvin, who's now at Berklee College of Music. And then when I moved to New York, I started doing my own like folk bands. But my first show that I ever did that wasn't an open mic was actually at Rhonda's studio in the Cummins building there in New Bedford.
Rhonda
So
M. Fazio. Gotta give her a
yes,
shout out.
yeah, that was that. I unfortunately that was such a fun show, and that's what I thought all of touring and playing shows would be like. I was woefully wrong about that. I'm trying to recreate that first feeling for this next part of my touring adventure. So, or not touring, I don't know, because there's a lot of places that are not as great as Rhonda's studios. So
I know. How do you prep a tour at this point, post COVID?
I don't. I've honestly been really enjoying not having to deal with misogynistic venue owners and
Oh
sound
God.
dudes. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been great. And being like, we're not going to pay you, but we'll pay you in beer. And right now I'm like, artists deserve to be paid. And so, and I've noticed a lot of my fans are like me. They want to like sit down and have dinner, and like they don't want to be up until midnight. So I think that when I do hit the road again or go play, I'm going to really try to be prioritizing more intimate venues that let people sit and listen and, maybe eat dinner and exist at a show the way I want to exist at a show. So it's nice to sit down every now and then as a fan. So yeah, I haven't played out since everything shut down that much, because I really want to be intentional about the spaces that I play in, going forward. So I know
Also,
that'll probably.
sorry, it's also like the wear and tear. Like if you do a lot of shows and not a lot of them pay, or there's like that emotional toll of like I'm not being listened to. It's like, well, why am I doing it?
Yeah, and it's bad for my health. Like I've been under doctor's orders, honestly, that I can't do that lifestyle anymore. So it's like, oh well, it's gotta be an early show, or you gotta feed me and pay me. So my friend John Bohannon, who produced my last record, said that the only way he takes gigs now is that if it fulfills 2 out of 3 requirements, that it pays well, is artistically enhancing, or if it's a good hang. So it can be artistically enhancing and a good hang, do it. If it's only one of those things, don't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to go forward like that. So no more late night shows where nobody comes and nobody pays you just to quote unquote pay your dues. Like there's a season of that in your life when you got to do it. But I've done that. I got that over with 15 years ago. So
Well,
that is where.
we do have you coming to a listening room in February, which is nice, which is Rhonda's space at Interwoven.
Oh yes, and that to me is it's a great hang. It's artistically enhancing, and usually, my like the people that show up in Massachusetts, tip us really well. So it's 3 out of 3. It's fantastic.
That's a
If only
layup.
everything could be Rhonda's studio.
I know. Well, that's why I work with her so much because she creates such a great space for musicians and artists.
She does, absolutely, and it's so much fun to be one of her creative partners. More on that later, maybe in a few months down the road, we can
Yeah.
talk more about that.
What got you into songwriting?
I was always like, as a kid, I always liked writing and creating things, and it started to be one of those natural progressions into songwriting. And so I started tinkering with that as like a tween, at age 10, 11. But I didn't really attempt to play anything out until I was in college at UMass Dartmouth, and I started playing open mics at Cafe Arpeggio, and then in New Bedford. Um, and then I played the show at Rhonda Studio, which was just kind of like a hippie jam, and it was so fun. Um, and then when I moved to New York City, open mics are really accessible there, and they're everywhere. And I just started to play songs, and I was in kind of folk bands, you know, 2008, 2009 in New York, and it was just very affirming, and as a young person, very fun. So, I had boundless energy and could stay out till 2 on a work night. So it's like that. I'm turning 38 next month, so it's like I don't have that in me anymore. But it's okay. I paid my dues. So, and since then I've been songwriting pretty steadily. Um, since 2006, 2007. Yeah. As intentionally as an artist, as opposed to just being a precocious tween.
Now, you write songs in a lot of different contexts. Like you write for your own solo work, for the musical Leather Daddies, for Songfinch. I mean, are the processes for those different kinds of writing similar? Are they different? Where's the overlap?
I think that like any kind of, I liken it to British theater actors. You get training in everything, and then those skills you can play any kind of role. I would also say that about method actors, but I know like I think it's like the acting training. It allows you to, and this is just because I've hung out with a lot of actors in my New York days. The acting training kind of gives you that ability to um, apply it to any kind of role. And so I think for me, songwriting, I have always taken the approach, which is kind of the Nashville approach of show me, don't tell me, like don't bore us, get to the chorus. Yeah, like there's, don't human attention is finite. And so you can you got to take, for me, I take a formula that is tried and true for almost every kind of song out there, and then depending on the mood or the style or the genre, you can change that, and that can be chord progressions, or that can be melodic styles, or that can be an inversion of like chorus then verse, throw a bridge in there. You don't, you know but the main objective is that you don't want to bore your listener, because then they don't want to listen to you. And even unless you're the most devoted fan of an artist, you don't get that luxury. And I started writing songs, uh, and nobody knew who I was. So it's like they're in the middle of a conversation, eating dinner or having a drink at a venue, and they don't know who you are. So you gotta learn how to write a song that captures their attention. And I remember I would practice songs that I had written, like busking on the subway in New York City. Like, these people have no reason to listen to you. So you have to try to write a song to make them listen to you. And it can be different genres. It can be pop, it can be swing, it can be musical theater, it can be folk, it can be anything. But you have the same objective. Is like, you got to tell a story in 3 minutes and don't lose their attention. So that's kind of what I overlay on every genre of music that I play and write.
And I know you get categorized broadly as country, but I mean, I've been listening to your work the last few days. It's like there's all kinds of stuff in there. Like there are times where it's not even close to overt country. It's more like indie rock or chamber
I
pop.
think I think people, I never said I was country. I think that since I live in Nashville and people from outside of Nashville are like, oh, she's from Nashville, she lives in Nashville, she must be country. I've never said I was country, but it just kind of, the press went with it and ran, and I was like, okay, whatever.
I mean, there's rock and roll in Nashville too.
But outside of Nashville, people don't know that.
Yeah.
So like, if I was coming out of LA or Boston or New York, they'd be saying I was a folk singer. Actually, I was before I moved to Nashville, people called me a folk singer and then folk songwriter. But the minute you throw Nashville in there and then you throw a very kind of get to the point songwriting style, people are like, "Oh, she's country." So, I mean, hey, whatever. I don't really care. I people can listen and figure it out. So,
Who are your main songwriting influences?
I have a lot. I think the number one person would probably be Patty Griffin because she can write from from everybody's point of view. Um, and is just heartrending. And then I love Max Martin, who has written every pop song on the face
Right.
of the planet. So I love Max Martin. I love Patty Griffin. Um, who else? I love Leonard Bernstein from the great Broadway composer. Love I love um who else? Honestly, I love Taylor Swift. She can write anything and any genre and can get your attention in 10 seconds, which is incredible. Who else? I could go on and on. Basically, every disco writer ever.
It's funny you should mention that because I listened to Skip to the Part. I'm like, that could be a dance song.
I try, I want it. I can be either. I would like everybody. I would like all my songs to be able to be interpreted, musically interpreted in different ways. Oh, Dolly Parton is a huge influence on me too. I mean, she's the queen of writing a song and then having people interpret it in multiple ways. So,
Well,
and
you've done
I
that with
think,
your own songs because I think there are a couple on your self-titled record that were also on All Good Cowboys. Like Black Dress is a very different song on All Good Cowboys than it is on your second record.
yeah, and it was fun, like reimagining them because people are always like, man, if I could go and redo it. And when I got a chance to, I was like, I'm gonna redo it. And it's like, you guys can choose. A lot of musicians, I love, uh, who's people call her Tove Lo, but is an amazing pop writer.
She is.
She's incredible. And, a lot of times in pop, you'll hear the same song done four different ways. And it's like super normal in pop music to do that. So I figured, why not do that on my album, on my second album, my self-titled album? So it was really fun to do that.
I love how Black Dress is understated on All Good Cowboys, and then on the second record, it's like, I'm just gonna go for it. We're gonna have the big string section. I'm gonna emote the hell out of this, and they both
Yeah.
work beautifully.
Yeah. The first album, we didn't have very much money. The second album, I had the same amount of money, but 10 years of time in between, or not 10 years, I don't know, 6 years, something,
Yeah.
a lot of time in between. So it was, I was given the opportunity to take that same amount of money and just do something completely differently. So, the artistic choices on the first album were just a bunch of us youngsters who'd never made an album before going for it in Brooklyn. And I don't remember a whole lot about making that album because it was, I was also, like preoccupied with other stuff at that point, like coming out of the closet and, uh, you know, being 23 or 24. So maybe I was 25. I don't remember.
And it's New
But
York, so like the pace in New York is just crazier.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was very young and uh, had a really fun team working on that. And then the second album, Mercy Bell, was just very. It was like we marinated in it for a long time and really thought it out, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun making that one too.
How has your work evolved over time? Like, from All Good Cowboys to the self-titled record to Golden Child.
Um, I think that I just don't worry so much about writing. I just do it now. when I was a lot younger. And honestly, moving to Nashville really helped me with this because it's so normal to co-write here. And honestly, it helped me with a lot of my writer's block and my kind of beating myself up over like, why can't I write a song and all this stuff? And here people just write, 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 write. They just you do it. You do it the way an athlete trains. And so any of your kind of wallowing in your own neuroses, you can't do that in Nashville because it's a profession here. Songwriting's a profession, and it's not just something that you do on the side. So I think that's been the biggest thing that moving to Nashville helped me career wise and artistically and creatively is just get it done. You get it done. Yeah, you got to be prolific like Bob Dylan or Patty Griffin, honestly. You just got to churn them out.
At that point, is it just a case of like you fling it at the wall and then, oh, that one sticks? That
Yeah,
one.
and yeah, and you go for it, and then if you don't love it, you give it a week or 2 months or something, and then you can go back to it. But it's really helpful, honestly, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, I have writer's block," and I did for a while, but then it's like I moved to Nashville, and I realized you just got to do it. It's like if you're an athlete training for a competition, even on days you don't want to work out, you got to go and like at least walk on the treadmill. So, yeah, that would be my biggest thing is just like not being so intimidated by it. Just do it.
And in terms of your collaborators, is it, kind of a specific group of people? Are you bouncing around to different writers to work with?
It's like cross pollinating with everybody. I do have a few people that I go back to in terms of musical collaboration, like arranging and whatnot. But when it comes to writing, if I like your music, I'll write with you. I won't write with anybody, but if I like your music, I'll write with you. If I like how you write, I'll write with you. It's pretty much how it works.
And then having, crammed out those 10 songs a week, when you get back to writing for yourself, is it a lot easier? Do you bring that
Oh,
attitude back?
it's so easy. It's like it's it all, and it feels like a treat because you don't have to. Yeah, you're like, oh, I'm gonna take 20 minutes to like write part of a song. Like you look at it less of this like precious. I'm going to write a song, and you kind of look at it as like, oh, I've got 20 minutes in between this thing and this thing, like, going to my dentist appointment and like a freelance Zoom meeting. And you're like, I'm going to take 20 minutes right before I fold my clothes. And you'd be amazed how much you can get done in that kind of with that mentality. And you stop making it this like golden goose. Elizabeth Gilbert really says it well in her TED talk about creativity. She said, you just got to get up and do it every day and don't look at it like you're this tragic figure that it has been given this gift. It's like, yes, you have a gift as a creative artist, but your job is to get up every day and practice it. And it's really good. And Ira Glass says the same thing in his famous kind of advice about being a better creator and storyteller. It's just like you gotta keep doing it. You just gotta keep doing it. And then sorry, the cat is walking past me. But yeah, you just gotta keep doing it. Even if it's not, and they both are like Liz and Ira are both say it's not all gonna be good, but you're practicing, and that's what really matters.
That was a lesson I got to learn when we started a family, and I didn't have my 3 hours in my little home studio anymore because the moment I pulled the guitar off the wall, my youngest would be like, "I'm gonna hit that." I'm like, "Oh," and I was really struggling. I got great advice from a musician, Chicago musician, actually, Jason Narducci, and said, how do you do it? Because you're a dad and you run a business. And he's like, yeah, I gave up Colbert, and I just
There you go.
find the time. I mean, there was one night I was writing lyrics at the table and my daughter needed a snack. I'm like, yeah,
That's what
I
you
can't be
do.
precious. Like, I'll have to just pick up that thread later. And you realize
Yeah.
it's work. It's part gift, but you got to work at it, and you got to be just trusting yourself that when you come back to it, it's like, I may not pick up the thread exactly where it was, but I'll go somewhere cool with it.
And it's like another thing I recommend everybody look up. I'm gonna find it so that people I can give it. It's like Liz Gilbert creativity,
That's a great TED Talk. I saw it a couple of
It
years
is. It's
ago.
so good. And she even says, and I completely agree with this, it's that good to have other things in your life distracting you, like a family, like life, like a job, because she says you have something to create about, and then you savor it more when you're doing it, and um you don't resent it. And I can tell you from a fact, from being somebody that has gone from having a full-time job and having to sneak creativity into the cracks to being somebody who's like a quote unquote full-time artist. The second is, unless you're wealthy or making a lot of money, it's incredibly stressful and you start to resent it.
Hmm.
Because it's like, you're like, how am I going to pay my bills?
Right.
Yeah, I enjoyed art so much more when I had a full-time job, because I didn't about worry about making money. And even when I was bartending, it's like bartending doesn't it's not stable, you know? So yeah, it provides you flexibility, but unless you live in a place that's warm all year long, even Nashville doesn't get that. Or you have, you know, a clientele every single night, like you have to do the 3 months of the year that are dead. You just I I I highly recommend being an artist with a steady job,
Yeah.
because it's like a lot of that stress gets taken away, you know, unless your art is paying for your bills, which
Let's see if you can do that. That's not most of us.
no. And it's not, you're not a failure if you can't. We don't live in a country that supports artists. We're not Europe or Canada, so um sadly, but yeah, being a creative in the USA is rough. So it's go us for even trying.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking along those lines that, I mean, Leather Daddies is working in a grant process to try and get funding. Personally,
Hmm.
here we have tons of artists, including myself, who are doing grant funding, and we're just trying to scrape by to actually get people paid because we want everyone's work to be valued. And we're living in a society that just doesn't value it. They just think the art goes up on the wall or the music comes out of the speakers magically out of nowhere.
Oh yeah, and it's you know, I would love to be able to create art for free for people, but I time is time. We don't have a lot of time, and I need 8 hours of sleep for my health. Otherwise, get very sick. And like, I'm under doctor's orders to be very healthy these days, and like, um, we just don't have time, and so you got to pay people for their time. And that was one thing that my voice teacher Marcel said. She was like, if I could give anybody advice for being a professional musician, it's don't waste people's time. Don't waste your bandmates' time. Don't waste anybody in the creative process's time, because we don't have it. So, and I still stick by that.
That's a great credo. Um,
Yeah.
and also that has to play into like trying to maintain your mental health. You've talked very transparently on your social media in particular about mental health struggles. How does keeping that balance help you maintain that?
I've really had to focus on a big reason why I can't tour like I used to these days is because the touring structure that we use in this country, I don't know about other countries, is not great for your mental health. A lot of payment is in alcohol. They expect you to be there till 2 a.m. They expect you to
Be
be
there
in the next,
early.
yeah, be there early, be in the next city 4 hours away, or maybe eight, by 3 p.m. for load in. So the amount of times I've heard roadies and people on tour buses and tour vans and whatnot be like, we've only had 5 hours of sleep for 3 weeks straight. It's like, if I did that, I would have a psychotic episode. Like, there's my mental health does not allow it, and my physical health doesn't either. Like, I get really sick, and it's like I had to come to a reckoning of being like, well, I can't do. At first, I felt really bad, like maybe I'm not a real musician for not doing this. And then I started to hear from more and more people after COVID say it's been kind of a relief not to tour, because the way that it has been set up for so many people is just so grueling, and it's exhausting, and you don't like, I am not a person who likes sleeping on couches for 5 weeks straight. Like some people do, and that's okay. There are people
Right.
out there who love to sleep in a van and like live that life on the road. I am not one of them.
Oh, and the diet's absolute rubbish on the road too.
Yeah, it's terrible. And I have been having a lot of talks with other musicians recently saying that it's like people are coming out of the closet being like, I didn't ever like it, and I want to recreate. I want to create a new way of playing shows. And so it's honestly been really exciting to talk to other musicians who want to do the kind of intimate earlier shows where people are doing a listening room, and the audience is taken care of, the musicians are being taken care of, and I mean, it might not be a ton of money, but it's like it pays you for the night, and that you're being listened to and all this stuff.
It
So
hits two of those three things you talked about earlier,
yeah,
at least.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's felt good to hear other musicians echo that. It's, again, I know there's a lot of people out there who love like the tour van lifestyle. You go, you've got this. I am not one of them.
You can take the mantle for me because I want to be in bed at a
Yeah,
reasonable hour. I want to get
I
my 8 hours.
do. I do. I have to, or else
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's not good.
It's like I turn into a werewolf. Yeah. So
How has music been helpful with it? Not so much touring, but songwriting and recording.
it's always been a great outlet, and I've always turned to music, singing, writing. I mean, creativity, singing, writing, songwriting, all that stuff, even photography at a point, to like help me like uh almost journal about what I'm going through. And I've always done that since I was like a little kid. So I know that that will be one element of art and creativity that will never change. And that's not something that I necessarily feel like I need to share with everybody. But sometimes there's stuff in there that I'm like, oh, this one, the fans might like this. So yeah, so and honestly, it helps. I don't really filter myself, even if I'm writing stuff that's more for, human consumption. I'll still just kind of, you know, let reality fly and just kind of let it into those songs. Um, and so far it hasn't backfired on me. So people kind of like it.
Well, the contrast, like you have this really lovely music and then these really tough lyrics at times. And it's a really powerful combination. It's
You
like a lot of
know,
times a gut punch.
yeah, who is it? I think Tom Waits says it. It's like he loves beautiful melodies saying terrible things, something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's a Tom Waits quote, but yeah, and I just never want to. It's like filtering. It takes so much more energy, and filtering is different than editing, because learning how to edit something. I've always loved reading poetry, and poets do that so well, where they say something really raw, but it's edited so perfectly that it's like the editing makes it even more effective. And so, yeah, there's a difference between editing and filtering. And I try not to filter, but I do try to edit.
That makes
So,
sense because the
yeah,
editing is really about the impact those things
yeah,
have. The filtering is
yeah,
actually taking away because you're afraid of like sharing something, or are people going to think I'm weird because I said that, or whatever thoughts in there.
yeah. And I think we've all had that experience of like reading like, I love food writing, but there's two kinds. There's the navel-gazing blogs that talk about everything without saying anything before they get to the recipe. And then there's like the New York Times cooking session where you have one paragraph and they'll explain why this means something to them, and then they get straight to the freaking recipe. And I'm like, that is incredibly concise. I love concise writing.
Thank you for
Um,
taking the express because I can tell you I cook for my family. How many times I'm like, is there a skip this section button? Because
I know.
I need the measurements and directions.
I don't have time. I don't have time. And I want to tell these people, show me, don't tell me. It's like the famous songwriting advice. It's like, show me, don't tell me. And it's just, show me the recipe. And if you want to talk about why this means something to you, you can do it in a paragraph. I think that was a great creative writing like lesson I had in college, which was, we want you to get this point across, but you have one paragraph to do it. And I think really good writers are able to they're able to bring 3 pages of impact down into one paragraph. I mean, you don't have to, but it's a good practice to do. It's like the burpees of writing.
I think of Will Strunk, who I think he co-wrote The Elements of Style, and his one tenet was omit needless words. And he was so emphatic about it. He's like, he said it 3 times. Omit needless words. Omit needless, like that.
Yes.
I omitted all of them, but I have to repeat this 3 times so you get it.
Do it. Just omit it.
Yeah. So aside from Leather Daddies, what's next?
Honestly, that's taking up all of my kind of mental bandwidth right now. Because we still have like 10 more songs to write. And so, and I'm trying for the first time in my life to kind of focus on one thing, because usually I'm just like scatter. It's like everything's scattered. I'm doing 12 things at once. So I'm kind of in this kind of mindful mode of trying to focus on one thing, so I don't have any plans for a new record, but in the past there have been times when I'm like, I don't have any plans for a new record, and then one materializes within 6 months to a year. So who knows?
Never say never.
Never say never. Never say never.
Is there anything else you want to talk about that we haven't touched on?
No, I don't think so. I think we had a pretty good, if anybody in the area is near New Bedford, Massachusetts on February 19th, come see me play at Interwoven. It's going to be great. It's my favorite kind of show. Small, intimate. Rhonda's there.
It's going to be fun. And Miles Goulart will open from Hume.
Yes, it's going to be awesome. Really and excellent. We purposely made it early so that people who have to wake up and work early the next morning can do that. I listen to my fans when they say what kind of shows they want, and the number one thing they always say is, can you play earlier shows? And I was like, and I'm always like, gladly, I would like that too. So
let's all get our rest.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I'd like to wrap up with 5 questions I like to ask all our musical guests.
Go for it.
Yes. The first one is, what's your first musical memory?
Oh, jumping on my mom's trampoline when I was like 3 or 4, maybe 3, listening to ABBA, Super Trooper.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a heck of a memory.
Yeah.
What's one record you would take to a desert island?
Oh, probably ABBA's Greatest Hits, because at least it would keep me entertained.
Now I'm wondering if that's going to be the answer for the next question, which is, who is your super sneaky secret influence? Somebody that no one would peg you for.
Super sneaky. I mean, I love pop music. I just don't think I am very adept at synthesizers or drumming. So it's like, I've never gotten a chance to like let my pop and dance music fly. But I love disco and I love pop and I love Taylor Swift. Like, she taught me how to write a song, not in person, but by listening to her stuff. So I think I don't hide those influences, but I think people just they don't think of me because my music is kind of slow and sad. So you don't think of me, oh, that's a pop lover and a disco lover right there. But I do. I love it so much.
Who's a musician, living or dead, you'd want in your band?
Oh, Jack Antonoff or St. Vincent. They can do whatever they want with me, honestly.
Oh my word. St. Vincent particularly.
She's honestly, she could do the two. Amazing. Annie, if you're listening.
Record of Pocos. I'm on board.
Let's go.
Last question. What is your South Coast happy place?
Oh, Horseneck Beach.
Nice.
And no problemo. Honestly, they do a mission burrito better than any place past California. And like I've eaten them everywhere in this country. California will always have the best mission burrito, but No Props does it really good. And I think about it all the time.
And you can have some when you're back for your show.
Yes, I can. I'm so excited. That's my first stop.
Right on. All right. Well, Mercy, thanks so much for taking time to chat today. It's been really great.
Likewise, can't wait to see you in February.
All right. See you then.
Right on. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for another In Focus podcast, which is generously sponsored in part by Heavenly Spirits Importers and funded in part with grants from the New Bedford Cultural Council and the Fairhaven Cultural Council, local agencies supported by the Mass Cultural Council, a state agency. I'm Scott Bishop, and thanks for listening to the Artists Index.